Can we please leave politics out of metal, punk?
This video I have seen stitched literally dozens and dozens of times on TikTok in the last couple of weeks, with everybody from punks to metalheads giving their 2 cents on this, which of course can be summarized to
no, dear gosh, no.
But in all honesty, when I first saw this video, this is like the exact type of person I would imagine to say this statement, wearing an iron cross, probably because they saw Lemmy from Motorhead wear one time and they were like, well, if it's good enough for Lemmy, I'm gonna wear it too. And every band on their battle jacket is basically a gateway arena tour selling band. And this isn't even me hating on these bands. I listen to many of these bands, right? But in present day times, these bands from yesteryear offer a very surface level understanding of the various genres and subcultures this person is trying to remove the politics from. Bands that have quite literally been packaged and sold back to us for decades now. E.g. Nirvana once represented something quite countercultural. Now, that band's image has quite literally been copy and pasted onto every t-shirt in every mainstream store. Also, Black Sabbath literally has songs like War Pigs. Slayer has multiple songs which are like social critiques for how horrific war is. This level of cognitive dissonance is truly incredible. But this is the mainstream consumption mindset for literally anything. Consumption without any critical thought. The Spotify autoplay generation. If it sounds cool and has a guitar solo, then it's rebellion. No further analysis needed. We don't need to bring politics into it. Why would we do that? Listen to the lyrics, my friend. And before anybody's like, well, metal isn't always inherently political, Cal. Yeah, I agree, but metal has been a medium for decades now to discuss politics and also social commentary, and also just trying to say that like punk shouldn't be political is just honestly exasperating. Side note, if you're wondering why I'm not showing this person's face, it's because I just don't think it will achieve anything by being like, this person is the face of saying that we should remove politics from all genres of music that are considered countercultural and all subcultures. No politics should exist. We should put the blame just solely on this person. That doesn't achieve anything though, as I feel this is also a really interesting wider conversation that I have been seeing creep up for like a long time now. With genres like metal and punk rock getting more commonly co-opted by the mainstream, we are seeing far more of this sound being associated far less with social commentary and more of just the feeling of rebellion and doing something different without actually being anything different, and it's all propped up by a billion-dollar corporation. Yippee! Punk, the sound, and the subculture literally is rooted in a DIY ethos, doing it yourself rather than relying on others or corporations. They're making their own music, printing their own zines, making their own flyers, and handing them out. It was all done to stay away from the mainstream. Punk at its core has always been anti-establishment and anti-authority. The DIY stance is a inherently political thing. Punk is about giving the power and independence back to the individuals, back to the people. A very famous example within the punk subculture is literally the song Nazi Punks Fuck Off by the Dead Kennedys. Funny enough, the original intent behind the song was actually about the frustration with violent people showing up to gigs. But Jello, the writer of the song, states that after they made this song, that's when the real ideological Nazis began coming out of the closet. You know, they would attack Dead Kennedy shows, and that's when the song transcended and evolved in people's minds into an anti-fascist, anti-Nazi anthem. And metal, even though it typically isn't associated with the anarchist messaging like punk is, historically has been no stranger to politics. From the Cold War anxiety to the anti-war ethos or even just social critiques, there were many bands that were calling out the misuse of power and governments. And also on a visual level, before it had been packaged and sold back to us for decades now, before the look became associated with you're just going through a phase. This was all done on purpose. It was all visually a rejection of the mainstream. All of this was done to not conform with the status quo. And guess what? That in itself is political. You choosing to not think and do as everybody else is political. It's social commentary. What I'm trying to say is all these genres are all about resisting and conforming to the mainstream. Although the mainstream has tried time and time again to co-opt them and have their spin on it with, alternative fashion brands, which are just mainstream brands cosplaying as something different when they're not. And, big mainstream record labels signing bands so they can dip their corporate fingers into counterculture. None of that can rewrite what these genres and subcultures have been about. Also, side note, I feel I should say, if it looks like I'm sweating a lot, I am. I've been working all day, and this is the only time I've had to film a video, so here we are. Also, hi, I'm Cal. But back to the point. We can even look at some of the political extremes within, punk, just to see how nonsensical, how just pure nonsense this statement of, can we please remove all politics out of, punk and metal and grunge and all of these genres and subcultures. In recent times, we've had bands like Gloss in the punk hardcore scene. Gloss made their existence political, and it was so obvious in the messaging of their songs. Their music was about standing up for marginalized communities. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have bands like Screwdriver. What started off as a punk band became an outright white power band, with lyrics like "My country is going down the drain, once we had an empire, now we've got a slum." It was all basically xenophobic, racist rally cries powered by angry guitars. So when somebody says things like, can we just keep the politics out of punk and metal? I'm like, well, what politics? What do you specifically mean by that? Because historically, we quite literally have had anti-Nazi punks fighting it out with literal neo-Nazis who co-opted the punk sound. We've had the rock against racism movement on one side, and also white supremacist rock concerts. So what are you doing here? It's just such a clear lack of understanding of the history attached to these genres. And this is why gatekeeping to a degree is actually very good, because then you don't get just shithouse mentality of take without any critical thought. The landscape of these genres are so vast. We've got real punks fighting against oppression to like the fricking National Socialist black metal scene. It's just, the whole thing is an explosion of different political ideologies, and there is so much political tension within these scenes and genres. These genres have always been arenas for social and political discourse, and sometimes, unfortunately, extremist propaganda. You can't just airbrush past this and claim some apolitical purity. To know the genres, to know the scenes, is to understand the history and the complexities around it. So why do we keep hearing these cries of, well, I don't want politics in my music? Where does this, ignorance is bliss attitude come from? I think, one of the most obvious reasons is, all fandoms have factions. Not every listener is clued up on the history that we've just discussed, and they don't think to go, look at these things. A lot of people may just discover a punk or a metal band one day and gel with it because it sounds cool, it sounds aggressive, it sounds like rebellion. And that will be the level that they critically stop thinking. They don't think about, well, what lyrics are the bands actually saying? Or, they've just stopped at tier 1 of the genre, which is the big band names, the ones that have, meshed in with the mainstream and are arena selling. And then, I don't know, if one day they finally do get a dose of reality from one of their favorite bands or artists, and they do actually speak about politics, it's suddenly
Stop ruining my fun with your agenda.
Just they want the aesthetics of rebellion, but without any of the rebellious ideas. Rock out, but don't actually talk to me about any, real world issues. And I'm seeing this more and more. The logic of, if I just ignore it, it will go away. But the thing is, ignoring politics within music doesn't make it, less political. It quite literally just makes you less aware of what's being said. And, on a broader scale, if we all just adopt this mentality of, just enjoy it, it doesn't really matter what they're saying, just have fun, just rock out, cow. Turning a blind eye like that can let toxic elements fester within a scene. If everybody said, no politics here, please, then, racist or sexist or homophobic undertones in songs and communities will go unchallenged, because calling them out would be bringing politics into the scene. Do you see the problem here? Pretending to be neutral often ends up siding with the status quo. And if we're looking historically, that has never been good for marginalized people, has it? Another reason I think this mindset of remove politics from it all, does creep in is I think a lot of people are exhausted. Because of social media, we're constantly reminded that the world currently is a dumpster fire. And so maybe music becomes a person's outlet or refuge away from all of that, right? It's like their escapism. And I have seen articles and people discussing this online. In this interview, this person basically says it can be tempting to just ignore the bigotry and burrow into your record collection. Especially if you're someone that has the privilege to not be directly affected. So I suppose from this, people convince themselves that their happy place, whether it be, the mosh pit or your curated Spotify playlist, should be free of all politics and responsibility. But that always will be one hell of a privilege. If you are a person from a marginalized community and there are things going on in your scene that are prejudiced and derogatory, you can't just ignore that. You cannot simply just pretend it's not political. They don't have this luxury. And the real punk ethos has understood this since day one. It has always been about giving a voice to the people who did not have the luxury of ignorance. And I think this mindset of ignorance, you kind of see on TikTok a lot when certain trends, gain mainstream popularity. For example, a big one I saw a couple of years ago was when punk got really popular on TikTok and lots of people started dressing up as like the stereotypical idea of punk. And then from that, there'd always be like absolute battles in the comment sections. And people would be like, stop getting on my back. Punk isn't political. It's just about being myself. Or others being accused of gatekeeping if they were just trying to uphold some of the history of the subculture. I think due to social media, there's been this real push to separate the music from like the history or the political identity to, make it more inclusive and more easily digestible for the casual fan. And I get the inclusive spirit, I truly do. Nobody likes people that gatekeep the most needlessly small things, like, being able to name 15 different songs from a band before you can wear their band tee. But pretending that like values and messages don't matter is literally how you get, the TikTok we started this video with.
Can we please leave politics out of metal, punk?
A generation of fans who were sold the look of alt culture, but never taught about the fight behind it or the history behind it. I see so many articles nowadays basically pointing out that subcultures are frequently reduced to mere fashion choices. Essentially they are completely devoid of their original rebellious spirit. And this commodification of subcultures really just does foster a sense of inauthenticity amongst participants. And I feel inauthenticity is the key word here. When you divorce politics and punk, you quite literally just end up with another trend, another hollow shell, another thing that can be packaged and sold to people in, alternative brand that's definitely owned by some big mainstream corporation. There is no culture there, just vibes. So when people say, no politics, just music, they think they're protecting their scene from any drama or problems. What they're actually advocating for is draining the scene's lifeblood, making them cookie cutter and consumable and packageable for the mainstream. And big business is a huge part to blame in this. Just how normalized it has become for rebellion and subculture and counterculture to be, co-opted and packaged and then sold back to us. It's a cycle that repeats itself time and time again. A new movement will emerge from the underground. It's raw and it's not trying to be consumable for all. Then naturally it will get popular, it will gain attraction, and because of that the money will start flowing, and once the money is around, the big corporations will see this and go for it like there's blood and they're sharks. Pretty soon that movement's imagery and style will get smoothed out and sanitized and then ultimately repackaged for mass consumption. And punk and metal have been through this in a huge way. What started as something truly different has become a very marketable product. By the time you see, like studded leather jackets or those studded leather bracelets in big mainstream shops, like Amazon, or heavy metal anthems being played in Super Bowl commercials, then you know it is blatantly clear that the machine has done its work, sanitized and packaged for the mainstream. A song will get played so many times on mainstream radio and in commercials that the meaning behind it just gets completely diluted. I suppose like another real silly example of like the mainstream just co-opting countercultural things, you know, like punk, is Spider-Punk. You know, Spider-Man, well, there's a Spider-Punk variant. But guess who this anti-establishment, anti-authority character is owned by? The Walt Disney Company, of course. You know, let that sink in. This demonic mouse owns the punk. Punk's look and attitude is being used to sell the mainstream this rebellious character. When Punk's rebellion becomes a Disney-owned IP, you truly know that commodification is real and oh so dangerous. We see so much of punk, metal, and all these subcultures show up in mainstream pop culture now. But it is always the smoothed out cookie cutter version. Just buzzwords with no real depth. Like sure, Spider-Punk is anti-establishment until he's on a lunchbox in a Target store. This kind of behavior strips away all the cultural depth, the politics, and kind of like the messiness, and just leaves a marketable product behind. So team, when somebody says, can we leave the politics out of music, please? Maybe what they truly mean is, can we just leave out the parts that make me uncomfortable or make me think and question things? But quite honestly, with these genres, discomfort is the whole point, as that is where the conversation and change starts. These genres, punk, metal, were never meant to feel squeaky clean and safe. That is what we've got mainstream pop for. And if, you know, punk and metal are now starting to feel that way, I think it's worth having the conversation of why that is and who made it feel that way. And for what reason? Money. Money is the reason anyways. Yeah, that's what I have to say on that whole topic of, can we keep politics out? No. I'm incredibly sweaty and tired. Skog, do you have anything to say? Sensational stuff, Skog. You could have summarized the whole video just like that. Anyway, I've been your boy Cal. If you're new here, please feel free to subscribe. There'll be another video here, and I shall see you all in the next one. Oh, my arms are actually sticking together. This is disgusting. Okay, bye. No, seriously, I'm going now. I desperately need a shower. Bye, goodbye, bye.